Bienvenidos. Thank you for everyone coming out. I know it's a little cold and rainy. Won't take much of your time, but I just wanted to give you a quick synopsis. I know Domingo will give me that look to cut it off, but again, thank you for coming out. Yes, I've been on City Council since 2017. It's been an honor to represent the district that I grew up in. Born and raised in Grand Prairie. The torch was passed to me from my parents. My father's here with me, Frank Del Bosque. My mother's at our church doing a church function with her women's guild. She couldn't be here, but they've been LULAC members for many years. And so I became a part of it once I became of that age to get involved. And they've always taught me is it's not what you do so much, but it's what you do to give back. And that's how we were born, and that's how we were brought up, not only me, but my siblings. And so that got me involved into politics of what is the need. Now, growing up in our neighborhood, where we live, I represent the central east side of Grand Prairie. School board member David Espinosa, he's lived in that district also. I grew up on Avenue B, I believe he grew up on Avenue C, but it was predominantly Mexicanos from the Rio Grande Valley. And that's how we were brought up. Our family is from McAllen. We were brought up, Dad came up in the 60s, he worked at LTV, and started getting threaded in the community, but there was also a need. My mother discovered the need of helping those that just don't know. And that's where I led into 2017. I was the first colored elected to the city of Grand Prairie for over 163 years. And we identified the need. But that being said, there was a lot of pushback. So for me, I had to take a huge step back and says, what does this mean? Being the first color, there was a lot of pushback during my campaign. We got the calls, my parents got the calls, we got the signs and all the negative. But that put more fuel in me to get out there. Now that we're predominantly, in the last 6 years, we're predominantly colored, now it's how do we benefit representing our city that's become so demographic? Not only socially, but business-wise, economically, how we grow. Grand Prairie is a population of 200,000. That being said, we don't have like the bare necessities of a hospital, but I'm working on that now. We don't have higher education, but we're working on that now. So as a councilman and a business owner, I look at what is the biggest need. Medical is always a big need, but also how do we represent each other? And what is the need there? You know, whether it's education. You know, there's a big bridge between the city and the school, and how do we work together? But as a LULAC member, that torch was passed on to me, I looked at it on the city side. The city, for as long as it's been in existence, and LULAC has been involved in the city, it's never got any type of city funds. Well, Councilman John Lopez, he co-authored to where we were able to now, this year is the first year, that LULAC gets city grants for $10,000 a year. And for Grand Prairie, for us, that's a big monument. That's something that I take pride in. And it will continue to get those $10,000 every year going forward as long as we're existing in Grand Prairie. And it's great. And we took it a step further. We were able to get one of our streets downtown named after Dolores Huerta. We were able to get, we had enough support there, we were able to get for all of our city employees to recognize Cesar Chavez Day. And so now that is a city holiday to where we get to recognize, embrace what him and Dolores was able to sacrifice, just like my father did when he worked the fields down in South Texas to sacrifice for me. So for that, I look at what can I do in the position that I'm in to give back. Because I know, just like the farm workers, they grow up every year throughout their growing their crops, they're doing all that. I look at myself as the same thing. What seeds can I plant today for those that are going to come behind me to harvest? What can we do today to help those in the future? And a lot of it is our students. And building that bridge between the city and the GPISD. So I'm continuing having to look and be out there to support in the forefront to say, what is the value that we have here that we can give back? Not only me, but the LULAC members and also our board members, is that continuing partnership. And always seeing, okay, how can we do better from last year? So I take pride in that, I take joy in that. As far as Grand Prairie, we're a huge development. If y'all haven't come through Grand Prairie, you will, whether you're going north or south or east or west. We're surrounded by 6 highways. We have huge developments. Our biggest one is up on 161, which is Epic Central. If y'all been out there, we have Chicken and Pickle, we have Vidoras, we have Finch. We have right now over 100 different restaurants that want to come into Grand Prairie. The good thing is that we get to look at and say what's the best for Grand Prairie. We're looking at bringing higher education to the north side of Grand Prairie off I-30 and Beltline. That's a partnership that we started about 3 years ago, but it fell dormant during basically politics. And if anybody knows the game of politics, it's a give and take. And so we gave up an opportunity, but now we're able to salvage it, and we're bringing back to the table to bring higher education. And it's a collaborative that I want to do with not only the city, but also with the school. Being able to collaborate and get our students, because for me, coming out of high school, I had a choice to go play football, or what do? Well, like my father, I'm a worker. And I chose, I went to go try it, didn't like it, came home, and I said, Dad, I'm just gonna grind it out. He gave me 2 weeks to get out of the house, and I said, that's all I need. I'll figure out the next step. And I've survived ever since then. But I was also taught, you eat what you kill. So I'm always out there looking. And as you can see, I'm a big guy, so I eat very well, right? So that being said, that is what I'm constantly doing. Figuring out what is the need, how can I adapt to it, and how can I offer that? Whether it's on my business side or political side or even in the community side. We've been able to be fortunate that our family has a private scholarship fund. We've been able to award over $300,000 to students. And they go anywhere from NYU to Harvard, to UT, to a lot of these universities that I keep up with the students. They come see me during this time when they're home for the holidays. And I ask them, what's your goals? Let's go over your goals. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to do? And for me, not going, it's kind of ironic. I didn't choose to go to college, but I chose to give back. And that's what we're about. As LULACers, that's what we're about. We educate and advocate. We educate what we can do, and we advocate what the plan is. And I stand by that. So when I talk to, like Domingo here, of what we can do in the community, what are things that we're getting ready for, not only tomorrow, but we're curve jumpers. We're already planning things for the next 2 or 3 years. And how do we execute that? And who do we bring inside to help us achieve those? Because the end product is building what we're starting now. And so a lot of it is politics. We're going through some of that right now in Grand Prairie. There's things that well, we want to do a discovery to get transparency. But what does that mean? And how do we go about that? So as a council member, I'm always looking at what is best fit for the need. And so I'm always out there. And I'd love to meet anybody that wants to partner up and do better, whether it's in Grand Prairie, here in Oak Cliff, or wherever in Texas, is what do we do to help our own to get to the next? Because honestly, if you look at this, when we did a procurement and we looked at city funds for the last 18 years, the city was awarded over $1.4 billion in city contracts. 90% went to the white contractor. Historically, they always go and they always subtract to us. Well, Councilman Lopez said we need to change that. He developed and created an expo for Latino business owners and how to be a subcontractor to be a prime to get city contracts. And what do you need? What your insurance, everything, all your infrastructure. How is it to do that? We've been going on 3 years. So before, out of that 1.4 billion, 90% went to the gringo that was a contract. He subcontracted. The other 10% went to minority, but we found out during that discovery, minority was the prime. This white contractor went to his wife because she's a minority, she's a female. So that was 8%. So we were left 2% to divide between everyone else. Now that we're proud that we're up past 22% now, 3 years later, that are going to Brown. And we're educating, we're having these expos at City Hall of how do you become a prime. Subcontracting, we did that for many years, now we want prime. Now we're awarding Hispanic, Latino business owners. And we're also educating our black brothers and sisters in our community. We have found that it's more power in numbers. So we look between me and my fellow council members that are on the other side, that how do we collaborate? How do we get to the next level? And we've supported that. Now we have our expo for African Americans, for black business owners, and we have them. And now we're diversifying and getting into our chamber to separate all of that. That way we have the correct representation of who we are, what we are, and what we've always been able to offer, but we've never given the chance. And that's what we want. We just want fairness. We want inclusive. That's it. We just want to be able to be at the table instead of standing behind it. So historically, we look at it, and forgive me if I say this, and I say this because I talk very blunt. So we're done with the bullshit. Now it's time to brass taxes. Let's figure out what the need is, and let's move forward. And that's what we are, and that's who we are, and that's what we're going to maintain. We're going to create and maintain a status quo that enough is enough. It's our time to be at the table instead of being behind the stand hoping to get crumbs. Those days are over. So for us as a council, for me as a council member, we know we've already set our 15-year plan. We've already set that we're working right now with the $1.3 trillion infrastructure plan. And what does that mean? In my district, my average income is a little over $30,000. It's an old district, period. It's the second oldest. But I know the biggest need when we have our weather that comes in and we have a freeze like we did many years ago, the kids there, the students, they have to go to McDonald's or Starbucks and sit in the car to link up to finish their homework. Well, I go every year along with my fellow colleagues. We go to Washington to meet with our congressmen, our senators. We give them in hand, here's our need. Fiber optics, transportation, creating new jobs, higher education, the medical desert. Now we're working on federal funds. Now we're in the development stage. Now we've already made our connection. We've connected the dots, now we're executing. So for us in Grand Prairie, that I consider us as the donut hole of DFW, we have not only land to offer, to incentivize companies to come in. If anybody knows Grand Prairie, we're 360 ends and 287. We still have 20,000+ acres to develop. On the north side, we're talking to higher education to bring them in. We're fitting the need because we're becoming competitive. And we look at that as a city. We see the growth everywhere around us and we have to compete. Otherwise, that business is going to go elsewhere. And if we don't have the business coming in, then we cannot be primed to get those contracts. So, for me, I'm in the middle. I'm the glue. I'm the one that's connecting the dots and finding out at the end of the day, I'm going to protect my own to get our own up at the table, to get them in charge, to get them in lead. And then at the same time, I'm going to expect them to give back. And so one of the contracts that I'm working on is we have Bell Helicopter and we have Lockheed Martin, both federal military contract companies. They both receive military contracts, billion-dollar contracts. For the most of us, when we grew up in high school, we had like wood shop, learn how to do construction. Well, times have changed. Now we're in the process of starting those conversations to implement these companies, to go into our school system, to create how to work with the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, to learn to be an engineer, because school is not for everyone. But what we found out during COVID is a lot of these young entrepreneurs, these young kids are very creative. And when I went to go visit Lockheed Martin, and I go into their room of development, it's like you're playing video games. And you have these young engineers. So if we can adopt their practice and put them in our school system, prepare our kids to go out, and the same thing with Bell Helicopters. They're right now, they're building the new state-of-the-art military helicopters. So they do fabrication. So we put those fabrication shops into our schools and teach our children, our kids, our students to learn a trade. If you don't want to go to college, college's not for everyone. I'm a product of that. But I also am a product that it can be successful. So if we're able to teach them a skill trade, that they're going to be walking out of high school making an average of $75,000 when they're 18 years old. I know that when I graduated, I wasn't making that. It'd be great if I made $75. But that is what I mean by us giving back. Fortunately, again, I learned from my parents. They told me it's not what you do, but who you are and what you give back. So we have a lot of great things going on in Grand Prairie. A lot of moving parts. We have our 15-20-year plan already out. We're looking at federal and state funds of our relationships, not only with our state reps here, but our senators and our congressmen up there in Washington. We're every session, like we're getting ready, the session's about to start in Austin. We're going there this March. And then that's the first part of March. The second part of March, we'll be flying up to Washington and push the agenda. Push the agenda. Earmark our money that we need. We've asked for a little over $500 million for Grand Prairie. And that's going to go in for fiber optics again, for transportation, all these things that is the need that we've identified to get to the next level. So I'm very proud of what I've done and what I've been able to achieve. I know that my plan next year was to run for mayor, but right now, it's unfortunate that even though Hispanics, Latinos are the highest population in Grand Prairie, we can never, ever achieve more than 10% of vote. Our last election, we only got to 7%. So I don't have the support yet. Now, unfortunately, I do have the support of our black community, but that's only a percentage of it. I need 50% plus one vote, and that's my vote. Right now, I think on the best day, I can get 27 to 32%. So there's still work. So I'm pushing me going to the next level until 28. But in the next 3 years, I have my goals of what to do to get with LULAC, for us to get out there to create the vote, to go get the vote, to register these people. And a lot of it is our students. These students here, they can get their families, and they can get their tios and tias and everybody else out. And so we're strategically planning. But for me, for right now, my biggest need right now is to come out to the community and find that. So, again, I thank you for your time. If I don't see any of y'all again, Merry Christmas. And if y'all have any questions, I'm more than willing to be here. We'll start now. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. Great job that you're doing. I have two questions. The first one is the percentage of Latino contractors you're giving. You said it's 10%. In your 10-year plan, have you projected to increase that every year as we go?
Oh, yes, definitely. Now, we do our Hispanic Expo. We do it every 3 months. So right now, we're planning for this spring.
Also, are you communicating with North Texas Hispanic contractors, with John Martinez, to include them in the process for bidding?
Definitely, definitely. I have my cards here that I can give you a card and we can start sharing emails and get on a mass.
And third and final, and this is recent news, and this has to do with the superintendent. What can we do as a community to support him with his upcoming legal battles? Because, you know, we want to be there for him. How can we do what we do?
So, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, and I'll speak on behalf of me living in Grand Prairie. My kids went through the school system. I went through the school system there in Grand Prairie. As us as a community, as a taxpayer, I would call and request open records of the documents that have already been. I would then, for us as a community, get together and do a discovery on why. And does that hold water? You know, as I can say from my knowledge, and I may be wrong, but from my knowledge I've learned, the school board gives direction to the superintendent to get out there and make change. Now, we don't know what actually happened. There's a lot of people who say, there's a lot of cheese, there's all of that, right? But let's get down to what was written on black and white and why. Why was the vote 5-2? And then be able to get in there and discover why, and then go out there and basically get together and strategize. How do we do this? But call those out. Call those people out. Is there nepotism? Is there this? Is there that? They owe it. It's their oath that they took as a school board member to be transparent to us as the taxpayers. You know, the school has a higher tax. Theirs is close to 600 million. Ours is a little over 500. And so we have to hold them accountable that they're doing the best job for our students, for us as a community, because we pay a lot of taxes. For every penny that comes in, they get 49%. Or actually, they take 52 cents.
As a community, what do we do?
Well, we have to get together. One, we have to get together to community strategize. We have to come up with a game plan, but the first thing is to call for open records. Because that's going to tell you what the school board, how they went to make their decision. And then from there, we start to strategize of who we need to get involved. And then call people out.
Yeah, question. Hi, good morning. Reyna Los Santos here with the Education Center. But my question to you is, nationally, we just had elections in which we have a new administration incoming. Here in Dallas, our mayor has said that 100% our police force is going to get behind ICE and going to go and do what they say they're going to go and do. What is the stance of the city council and the mayor in Grand Prairie, and also with the police force? What would you say is the representation of the police force? How many of them speak Spanish? Because with all of this ICE activity, there are probably going to be many more encounters between the police and our community. How are we set to be able to respond to that? How's the city of Grand Prairie going to be? What's their opinion on that? Are you like the mayor of Dallas 100% or not?
So we're not. And when I say we're not, I'll elaborate on that. One, I've never liked the police. Growing up in Grand Prairie, I've gotten arrested. When I got put into office and they gave us a tour, the chief at the time, and I'll explain, let me explain. I know, let me explain. Let me lie. There's a story behind it. So when you get elected, you go by every department. And so when the chief says, well, we're going to go see the jail, I'm going to give you a tour. I looked at him and I said, you don't need to. I've been in the back. I've been in there twice. I was in the old jail, I was in the new jail. But you got to understand, when we grew up, it was very, very, very racist. My first day in office, when I went to my 4:30 meeting, they came to me and said, just because you're here, you're not going to get anything passed. My first term, I didn't get nothing approved. It was always a 1-8 vote. Me being the one, them being the other. So I knew what I had in front of me. The only thing I could do is change and get those to come to support. So my first term, all I did was just listen and learn. That being said, that was the taste growing up. My dad was with me the day that I got arrested while I was moving into my house. Dallas Cowboys were playing Green Bay. I got arrested in the first quarter. I walked out in the fourth quarter. Saw the last 2 minutes of it. But they found a reason. And that's just it. So, me going into city council, we knew it. Now, when ICE tried to come in 3 years ago, we were 100% saying, y'all need to leave, and we escorted them out of Grand Prairie. The problem is now, after January 20th, when it becomes federal law, that's going to be a harder, because you see what other states are doing now. Hey, either you're with us or you're against us. Either you can go to jail, we're still going to do. That is going to be a very sensitive subject. But I can tell you, as of right now, as a city, even speaking with our chief, and he's come out and advocates that they're not welcoming Grand Prairie. We'll hold that. But there's only so much us local can do against federal. And that is going to be a tough fight there. We can't say no. I might get arrested again. I've been in there. No big deal. No big deal to me. But I have to fight for those that don't know. And they can't fight the fight. I've got to fight the fight for them. And I'm willing to do that. Not a problem. So that's where we're at in Grand Prairie. We just got to do what we can for what we have the time that we have. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Zenobolsky, thank you for what you do. There is we have a Main Street Fest in Grand Prairie, and I have requested an open records request, and I got that report back. And apparently in Grand Prairie, they pay the country bands over 100,000 plus. When it comes to La Mafia and Tejano bands, Norteño bands in Grand Prairie, they pay them like 25,000. We bring more people, we bring more revenue in the city of Grand Prairie. Why hasn't any of the council members, made that public or let the community know that, that's unfair. There's some equity going on in there. When we spend more at Main Street Fest, we buy more. Why is it that the mayor and the city continue to have a huge budget for, your soul, more than your soul band or your jazz bands, Latino bands? That's a lot of money. As opposed, like if we were to have like Fuerza Regida or something at Main Street Fest, I guarantee you everyone in the DFW would be there and we would spend a lot more money as opposed to country bands, these banjo bands that no one knows, but
Right.
they spend all that money.
Well, so I'll address that, and here's a quick fix to that. So we recognized that 2 years ago. So we went to our mayor during our executive session, and this is when we talk about cut the BS. We need representation because we have representation now. So what the mayor did, he created an ad hoc committee. It was me, Councilman Kurt Johnson, Black, and one of our other, he's no longer on the council, Black. So we had one representation from every group. And what we did was we restructured Main Street Fest. We looked at what the funds had always been allocated by taxpayers' money. And what we did was, historically, Friday was for the whites, Friday and Saturday. And they spent over $100,000. Sunday was for everybody else. And while they spent $100,000+ for country acts, and I'm not being racist, but we're just going to have a talk, when they had for the white groups, it was $100,000+ for Friday and Saturday. But for Hispanics, the highest we ever paid was $16,000. And we had to split that day up. So, since we had representation and we had the vote, all it takes is 5 to get majority vote. We changed it. And every year now, everybody takes turns. So our day, like last year, was Friday. We had a sellout, and actually it was free to the public, but we had more attendance. We had over 45,000 people show up. We had Jake Bettis and Michael Segala. And it was a great time. And so not only that, but it was the taxpayer money funding this. I said, why aren't we going out? We're a very industrial town. Let's go to this industries to get sponsorships. Never been done before. Our budget has always been $275,000. This year, we already have that from sponsorship. We took the lead as ad hoc committee, and I'm the chair for that, is to get out there and get the companies involved. So we have Baylor. They put in $25,000. American Airlines has Lockheed Martin, Bell, everybody's coming on board because they want to be part of the community. Now we're saving taxpayers money. We can reallocate those to do something else. That's how we do it. It's majority vote. There's more power in numbers. It's like our armed forces. We go to war, this is not one person, we have a group. And that's what we're learning and adapting. Anything else? We're good? Again, thank you for your time. Thank you, sir.
All right, let's go ahead. Now go to Bosque City Council, Grand Prairie, Texas. All right, so a lot of y'all have been hearing the post-election results, and you've been hearing talks about mass deportation, building the wall, all types of repealing TPS, DACA, and things like that. So there's been a mobilization at the national level to get ready for January 20th. And our next speaker has been involved in trying to create legal pathways and legal options for those of us who are dealing with immigration in this country. He is a graduate of Yale University. He lives in Fort Worth, Texas. He was on the Bishop's Immigration Task Force for the Catholic Diocese of Dallas. He worked with the Texas Organizing Project and taught kindergarten through the Teach for America program. And he is now the Texas State Director for the American Business Immigration Coalition. Let's give a big hand to Juan Carlos Cerda.
Thank you so much, Domingo, and to LULAC for this opportunity to speak. Again, my name is Juan Carlos Cerda, and I am the Texas State Director for the American Business Immigration Coalition. And I'm also a proud graduate of Grand Prairie High School, and really pleased to see the work that Mr. Espinosa and Mr. Levosa are doing. You know, today I'm going to talk about immigration and how Latino immigrants are going to be affected by the Trump administration. And I'm going to talk a bit about the advocacy that we do at ABA. We're a bipartisan coalition of more than 1,700 CEOs and employers that promote common sense immigration reform. And we're led by both Democrats and Republicans, like Woody Hunt, the senior chairman of Hunt Companies here in Texas, Andrew Tisch, the co-chairman of Lowe's Corporation, who owns the Live by Lowe's over here by the Cowboy Stadium, and Carol Siegel, the co-founder of Creative Apparel Furniture and so forth. And our...
We can't hear you. We can't hear you. Can you put the mic a little...
So, yeah, of course. So our organization was responsible for President Biden creating the Keeping Families Together program, which would have allowed over 500,000 undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens to apply for work permits and a green card. Our advocacy also led Biden to make it easier for employers to sponsor Dreamers for employment-based visas. These policies were the biggest immigration policies created since DACA was announced in 2012. And that was thanks to the over 15 months of advocacy from over 300 employers, 110 members of Congress, and 200 local elected officials, including some from Grand Prairie, like Junior Izionu and Gloria Carrillo, and Brian Parra, who signed on to a letter supporting the creation of this program. Unfortunately, there was a court that said that the Keeping Families Together program is not legal, and we don't expect President Trump, when he comes into office, to appeal that ruling. But we showed that we can get the president to protect long-time undocumented residents, and that ultimately it has to be Congress that passes immigration reform. So our leaders like Woody Hunt and Andrew Tisch and Carol Siegel, they are committed to working with the Trump administration and Congress to limit these mass deportations and find solutions like solutions to DACA, TPS, and long-term residence. Now, before I talk about how Latino immigrants are going to be impacted by Trump's enforcement agenda, I want us to take a step back and recognize the historic moment we're in for U.S. immigration policy. If you'll recall, from the 1860s to World War I, as we learned in high school, we had high levels of immigration with people coming from Asia and from Europe. But then there was a backlash by Americans who became more nativist and decided to restrict immigration in the 1920s. that led to the U.S. passing a law called the Immigration Act of 1924, which implemented something called immigration country quotas. And that unfortunately led to discrimination against Latinos and immigrants from Latin American countries. During the Great Depression, immigrants were the scapegoats. We were the ones that were blamed for taking the jobs of Americans, which was absolutely not true. And in the 1930s, when the Great Depression happened, Mexicanos were arrested and deported. Over 1.8 million of them were taken back to Mexico, even though some of them were U.S. citizens. Then we had World War II with the Bracero program, where people like my grandfather were brought to this country to grow the produce while soldiers were fighting abroad in Europe and Asia. But then when the soldiers came back, again, immigrants were scapegoated for the recession that followed after World War II, and over 1 million Mexicanos were sent back to Mexico under Operation Wetback under the Eisenhower administration. So now we're at a point in history where that could happen again under the Trump administration. In the 1960s, that's when our immigration laws were set, where we had President Lyndon B. Johnson sign a law called the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, which removed per country quotas and allowed millions of Latinos to immigrate legally to the U.S. And that's one of the reasons why Latinos are the largest and fastest growing minority in this country. But the unfortunate reality is that our government has not managed immigration very well, especially at our southern border. The border is the reason why voters decided to elect President Trump, not just because of the economy, but because of the lack of reforming our immigration system. And even 43% of Latino voters elected President Trump. That was an 8-point increase from 2020 because many Latinos are just not happy about what they saw on TV with what was happening at the southern border. And so Trump is not only going to crack down on the border, but he's also going to work to restrict immigration. And we could see new policies that could end over 60 years of diverse and large-scale immigration. And one of the policies that Trump is going to do is he's going to issue executive orders that will arrest long-time undocumented residents in his first 100 days of office. Now, I know that there are people who say, no, it's not possible for Trump to do this. We're a nation of immigrants. He doesn't have the resources to do it. But if you just look at what he's announced over the past few weeks, he's selected people like Tom Homan, who has said that any undocumented immigrant is a priority for deportation, and people like Stephen Miller, who rumor has it would deport his own mother. So those are the folks we're dealing with, and that's why in his first 100 days, Trump is going to do worksite enforcement raids, similar to the one that happened in 2018 when there was a raid just 2 hours away from here in Paris, Texas, where over 150 immigrants, I know some of you were there, including several organizations like LULAC and TOP. 150 people, most of them had been here for many years, many had U.S. citizen children, most had no criminal background record, they were arrested and put in deportation proceedings. So we're going to see more of those actions happening in the next 4 years. And Trump is going to go to Congress and ask for more funding for his enforcement agenda. He's going to do this by going to the budget and going to the Defense Department for funds, and also through a process called reconciliation, which only requires 51 senators to vote for. So unfortunately, that's going to be the reality. People who selected Trump for the economy, they're going to be rudely awakened when people start disappearing from the community and put in deportation proceedings. Another thing that Trump is going to do is he's not going to appeal a court ruling against DACA, which right now is in the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and we expect to happen in the next few months. Unfortunately, it probably will be a bad ruling. And even if organizations like LULAC or MALDEF decide to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, I'm not confident, and we're not confident that the U.S. Supreme Court is going to uphold DACA. So what would that mean? It means that 530,000 DACA recipients like myself, like many of our LULAC members, Delma, we would probably lose our work authorization, our driver's license, and be subject to deportation. Add to that Trump is going to end temporary protected status, or TPS, for millions, over 1 million immigrants. These are people who left their country because of war, because of famine, because of civil unrest. Countries like Venezuela, Honduras, Nicaragua, and I think there's one more, Honduras and El Salvador, and and Haiti, right? So a lot of Latino countries. So what Trump is going to do, he's not going to redesignate these countries for TPS. And the bad thing is that these redesignations are about to expire. Already in March, El Salvador's TPS designation is going to end. That's going to be followed in July by Honduras and Nicaragua, and then in September for Venezuela. So Trump, he's not going to redesignate these countries for temporary protected status. And what that would mean, again, is TPS recipients losing their job, losing their work permit, their driver's license, and being subject to this enforcement agenda that the Trump administration is going to carry out. And the third thing that Trump is going to do is he's going to seek support from states and local governments for his enforcement agenda. Already we saw that last year Texas passed SB 4, which would allow police officers to arrest anybody that they think entered the country illegally through Mexico. We expect the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals to issue a ruling on that specific case, and I'm not confident that's going to be a positive ruling, so we may see SB 4 coming into effect. Our state lawmakers have also filed legislation that's just going to make it more difficult for undocumented immigrants to live in Texas. One of the policies that they filed this last month was a bill to force undocumented students, dreamers who graduate from Texas high schools, who grew up here in Texas, to pay out-of-state tuition. That's a policy that even Republicans like Rick Perry supported in 2001. There's other bills that were filed that would target undocumented children. Since 1982, the U.S. Supreme Court has allowed undocumented children to attend public schools free of charge. This was a case called Flighter We Go. It allowed people like myself to attend public schools in Dallas and Grand Prairie and become valedictorian at my high school. Thank you. But that policy is under threat because of bills that have been filed that would force undocumented children to pay tuition to attend public schools if the federal government doesn't stay up and pay for this education. Another legislation to highlight is requiring all Texas private employers to use E-Verify. So that means that undocumented workers, undocumented restaurant workers, healthcare workers, people who grow crops, they can't be legally hired by companies, and the company will have to look to see who doesn't have a valid social security number and then fire them from the job. And then the last legislation I want you to pay attention to, that's a bill right now, is a legislation that would require all counties in Texas to sign 287G agreements with ICE, which means that sheriffs and their deputies would be allowed to enforce immigration law. And that's something that I already see happening in Tarrant County, where I live, with Sheriff Bill Wayborn, who sheriff deputies are able to ask people about their immigration status and then arrest them and send them to ICE. So those are things that we have to defend against in the next legislative session that's coming up in January. But, these all sound like very bad policies, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And that's the fact that if these things happen, if we can't defend against them, then we can always go back to our lawmakers and we can ask them to pass permanent protection for long-time residents, especially dreamers, especially TPS recipients, and other long-time undocumented workers. So that's our job at ABIC, is to talk to lawmakers and show them the economic and political benefits of addressing long-time undocumented residents. And we showed that's possible because we did it this year with President Biden, with our Congress members Mark Easy, Jasmine Crockett, the Mexican American Legislative Caucus, Colin Allred. They all supported work permit for the undocumented, and I appreciate LULAC for also stepping behind that effort. So please meet with your lawmakers. Please urge them to limit these mass deportations and to oppose anti-immigrant measures that are going to hurt our economy. And if they don't listen to us, elect them and kick them out of office in 2026 and 2028. So ánimo, there's esperanza, and muchas gracias.
A lot of questions that I wanted to ask you. You speak to very quickly what is the natural effect. And then also, I attended a legislative update workshop in Austin this week, and I asked about some of those bills, and they were very conflicted. They were like, oh, those are dreams. They want you to pass those bills forever, but they never go anywhere. They're pre-filed, they won't go anywhere.
How likely is it that those bills might get this time move forward? And then also, when you speak to nationally, the Trump administration has said that they want to do denaturalization. Could you speak to that?
Absolutely. So I'll speak to the denaturalization threats. We know that this is something that President Trump campaigned on when he was running for the 2024 election, is basically taking away birthright citizenship from for the children of undocumented immigrants. And I'll just speak to this issue from a personal viewpoint, because I'm part of a mixed status family. And my U.S. citizen brother, he's the only U.S. citizen in our family, and he was able to sponsor my parents, who were undocumented for 27 years, for their green cards, which they just got 2 years ago. So, you know, ultimately Congress would have to pass an amendment to take away, I think it's the 14th Amendment, which gives the right for anybody who was born here to have U.S. citizenship. So Congress would have to be on board. Unfortunately, we do have very narrow majorities in both the Senate and the House, with only 53 Republicans in the Senate. They need 60 in order to pass any legislation to take away birthright citizenship. Same thing in the House. It's a very narrow majority with, I think, 217 after the Trump administration takes up 3 of those members of Congress for those positions. So there aren't majorities enough to take away birthright citizenship yet. However, Trump can issue executive orders that would challenge birthright citizenship, and these ultimately could go through the courts and create a public spectacle that, you know, potentially could lead to Congress having enough public support to take away birthright citizenship. And then to your second question about these anti-immigrant measures that state legislators have filed, you know, Speaker Dave Phelan from the Texas House, he's not running for re-election. Our leaders met with Speaker Phelan in the past session, and with Dennis Bodden before he was kicked out of the House as Speaker, to urge him not to prioritize measures like taking away in-state tuition. And they promised us that these were not going to be their priorities. But we can't be so sure this time around, because right now we have people like David Cook from Fort Worth who have been very anti-immigrant. We have Dustin Burrows who doesn't have the best record for anti-immigrant measures like SB4. So we're not very confident, you know, that they will not prioritize these bills, and that underscores the importance of talking to our state lawmakers in the upcoming legislative session, because totally, you know, we never imagined, you know, taking away some of these rights that we have, but if we are asleep, it could completely happen, and we have to be ready.
Hi, my name is Joe Morales, and I'm a middle school math teacher for almost 30 years now, and I'm a moderate Democrat. And I'll watch CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, Bloomberg News, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, over and over. And you listen and read all these different articles. The one thing that stands out is, look, 100% of our fellow Hispanics supported Trump. Okay, and so when you say like, oh, these things are going to happen, when 40% of your own people are supporting that, then why are we crying? What I'm saying is, sure, more than 50% of the white population voted for Trump and so forth, but when you look at those numbers over and over, you start to say like, you know, you're fighting, it's like being in a school district. You want to be in that school district with that superintendent, with that agenda, and you're complaining about it, then go to a different agenda, go to a different school district, or go to a different city, or go to a different state. What I'm saying in this population, when you know that most of your fellow Hispanics, brothers, sisters, cousins, because I know 1/3 of my brothers and sisters, more than 1/3 of my cousins, they support Trump. So when you look at when we're talking about what can happen, what should happen, the Texas Business Council said over and over, we do not support mass deportation. The Texas Business Council is run by mostly Republicans, mostly white Republicans. If you listen to all these articles over and over, the white Republicans know that mass deportation is not only is it not possible, it's not going to happen. Remember, least probability. So I say over and over, it's just one of those things that, we can keep on putting fear into people's eyes, but the simple fact is that you just need to talk to your fellow Hispanics. And most of the fellow Hispanics who I know, who supported Trump Republicans for 2016, 2024, they don't support mass deportation. They only support 5% of that. They don't support taking away DACA's right to have DACA's to have in-state tuition. So when you see him talk to all these people, you start to see it's like, well, they could, and he wants to, but he's not going to. And that includes Abbott and Patrick and Paxton. So that's what it says, like pushing the fear to a lot of people. I think that's going too far because I'm a moderate Democrat and I believe in Mac. Remember, the Congress is only being run by 3 + 3 for Republicans in Congress and +3 for the Senate. So that type of measure, we have 2022. And like a lot of people who are Democrats are saying, hey, you go and go crazy, just wait till 2022. And it just won't be a Democrat swing by 5 to 10 votes, it'll be by a lot more. And the Senate will be the same thing. So the facts, and we'll go back in history, Obama won the election after during the Great Recession. Biden won the election because of the COVID pandemic. Bill Clinton won the election because of Ross Perot and because of the economics. So if things are bad enough, you're going to see a bigger swing than we could get.
Yeah, I'm gonna address that real quick. I also had U.S. citizen family members also vote for Trump, and we never imagined, things like Paris, the raid happening over there, or Trump ever being elected. So I wouldn't get so complacent about all these things are not going to happen. And to be clear, we're not creating this fear. Trump is going to be creating this fear on day one of his office because he's going to issue executive orders like the Muslim travel ban and rolling back policies to scare people and show that he means business, because ultimately he does have a mandate from U.S. voters to get serious on the border and immigration. So let's not get complacent, and let's just do our diligence and speak to our lawmakers and protect our community members. And that's kind of your job as LULAC too, is keep giving people their rights and ensuring that they're protected.
One last question.
Yes, sir. David Espinosa also graduated from Grand Prairie High. So I would like to, in the near future, my opinion, you would be a great school board trustee in Grand Prairie.
Thank you. Once I get the citizenship, I'll run.
We really need strong advocates. But what I wanted to talk about today is your organization and what you're involved. Aside from being a trustee, my job, what pays the bills, is a deputy constable. And I see the real life situations with immigrants that are renting. Unfortunately, I don't like doing this, but we do evictions. And we get a lot of people that aren't from the country that don't know the process of the eviction. And they're being evicted. When I go to serve them, I try to educate them as much as possible and let them know, I'm gonna come back and unfortunately have to get you out. But the problem is happening is that their checks aren't landed when rent is due. So I see a lot of that, but they really don't believe that I'm gonna come back and actually get them out. But if your organization can educate them and let them know that, hey, los desalojos, muchos desalojos que están pasando y no saben que yo tengo que llegar a sacarlos como constable, pero los cheques no están llegando al mismo tiempo donde está la renta. And then you have some of these landlords, which a lot of them are slumlords, but they get them out and they hold these rent possessions over their heads, where it's like pay, and then when you don't pay, then they come and get them out, which I think is wrong. But there's a way we can educate our community and let them know, hey, this is the process. To pay your rent and to do these things to help them. And that would be a great session maybe to have and invite them to come out and let them know the process. But thank you for what you do.
No problem, thank you.
Last question. I have a gentleman from
Hablando Mexico saying this. The people in Mexico have a different version of what's happening with the immigration situation. This is my question.
How big will the impact that is coming from the new government of Donald Trump affect the Mexican people?
That's a great question, and we've already seen that President Trump has been talking to Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, and there is an agreement to try to diminish the number of migrants coming through Mexico in exchange for renegotiating the USMCA agreement in 2026. And Trump has threatened to put 25% tariffs on Mexico if Mexico does not agree to control this flow of migrants. So you will be seeing more migrants staying in Mexico, being returned to Mexico, because ultimately, Mexico can't afford to lose its economic relationship with the U.S. However, Claudia has said that if the U.S. starts deporting longtime Mexican immigrants, she's going to send back U.S. American citizens back to the U.S.
All right, thank you. Get involved in that. All right, I'm going to get going. I'm going to introduce our last speaker, then I'm going to introduce Delma Gorosieta, who's the president of LULAC 102. So, Mike, I also had a similar experience. Okay? So when I was 13, I was coming home from a football game at Russ Junior High, and I got stopped by 2 police officers on my way home because I had my bag with my gym clothes and my jock strap and all that stuff in there. And I guess we looked suspicious. 2 Hispanic kids were going home around 10 o'clock at night. So they threw me against the wall, searched my bag, and said, "Get the F out of here, you dumb Mexicans, and go home and don't come out." That was my first time I ever met a police officer. And the reason I mentioned that, after I became an attorney, on the weekends, on Mondays, I would have a lot of primarily Latino clients who would come in who had gotten beat up that weekend. They would get beat up, they get thrown in the alley, they weren't arrested. Okay? And they wanted to know what their options were. As a result of that, in 1988, and I'm going to educate you a little bit, NAACP, LULAC, and a Black-Brown Coalition, we got 20,000 signatures to create a police civilian review board. It was the first time a city charter amendment was put up for election. And the idea was that you would have civilian oversight of the police to deal with those allegations of police brutality, instead of the police internal affairs always whitewashing what happened to Antro. Especially if it was a black or brown, usually man, complaining about a white officer doing whatever they did. Now, we also elected because Ross Perot spent several $1 million in Dallas Police Association. But they did create a Dallas Police Association, a police oversight committee, but without basically authority. And the reason I'm bringing that up is we have now somebody who's going to be talking to us. She's the new director and policy monitor for the City of Dallas, OCPO. She has a master's and a bachelor's degree from State New York University in Albany. She has worked and served on multiple organizations with city governance and civilian oversight. And she is now the director of OCPO for the City of Dallas. Let's give a big hand to Michelle Andre. And then Delma, if you'll take over, I'm going to go to the National Board meeting. And Hilda, you're supposed to join me también allá.
So we use OCPO just because it was really long. So I'm the director and police monitor for the Office of Community Police Oversight for the City of Dallas. So I think where we can go as far as what you can do locally, right? So my office is mandated to, we were created in 2019 to review external complaints. We review policies at the police department and make recommendations. We review discipline, we recommend discipline as well. And if a constituent is not happy with a discipline outcome that the chief render, I can reach out to my boss, who I report to the city manager, and recommend that she review that discipline. I think the connection to the Civilian Review Board, they're another layer to us. I provide support, my office to that board. We also, put forth our findings in regards to investigations that we initiate and render our findings. Sometimes we're requested to review a determination that's been done by the police department from a citizen, and they can, employ me to initiate an independent investigation. And the reason why, my office was created because the community was not happy with the interaction with the police, right? I wouldn't be here if, we were doing everything right in the city of Dallas. So that was really important. And I think that one of the steps that I have been making sure 3 months being here from New York is, putting people in place and getting ready. So I have a policy analyst that's here that, is going to be tracking legislation that's coming out to make recommendations, input to the city council to keep track of that, right? So that we make sure that the city of Dallas, that we're keeping in mind what the community wants. But I also want to hear from the community themselves, right? We want them to participate a lot more. So the board meets the second Tuesday of each month in City Hall, right? It's open to the public. One of the things that I made sure was restructuring one of the positions I had, a mediation manager to a communication advisor. And I recently just fully hired my full staff. When I came in, we were really extremely short staffed. We were not doing a lot of outreach in the Hispanic community, and that's been something that, I employ my staff to increase, as well as provide additional, our complaint form and accommodation form in different languages. When I came in, it was just English and Spanish. I made sure that all our forms is going to be translated to all the languages according to the census, right? So that we're making sure we're outreaching. One of the things I'm doing right now is awareness of our office. I know that there's a lack of it in the Hispanic community, but we also have where the community is afraid to come, right, to file complaints. And I think where we can come in, my office, we're civilians, we're not police officers, and I think that, connecting with the different organizations, they need to understand that, if you're scared to go to the police and file a complaint against an officer, that's what we're here for. And sharing that awareness of our office is really important. One of the things that I've done recently with the recent hires is ensure that, we have people on staff that was fluent in Spanish, right? That can speak to those complainants who, are not English speaking. So we can make sure that we're reaching that I don't have to wait and call a translator to get that. So 2 of my recent, hires is going to be Spanish speaking and fluently, and writing and speaking. So that's been things that we've been put in place to make sure that, just we're doing as much as we can. But one of the things for me, I wanted to come here to make sure that I'm hearing exactly from you and not, just reading what your community, I want to hear from you. What do you want to see? What do you want the police department? I know there's been, as far as the politics, a lot that's happening. I want to just make it clear, I don't report to the city council, I report to the city manager. And, I look at it as, my office should be independent of that. And I'm here for the community. So that's been something I wanted to really highlight. But I really want, instead of talking at you and, I want to hear from you some of the questions that you have and concerns about my office, and also ideas of ways that we can improve and do outreach to your community. So I'm just going to throw that to you guys for questions.
Good morning, welcome to Dallas, first of all, and then second, thank you for looking for ideas from us. So I am Miguelisa Mira, I am the principal at Stevens Park Elementary. So I'm not from the area, and as far as my job has been what you mentioned, like being outside of in my community, getting to know my community, getting to know their needs. So one of the things that you mentioned is that you're being here for 3 months only, and you just hire everyone and that they are fluent in Spanish. How are you making sure that they are actually fluent? Because being conversational Spanish and actually fluent in Spanish is two different things. And the other one is, what are your plans to actually being outside in the streets? because most people won't go to the Tuesday at City Hall. That's one of the things that I found out. I've done meetings on my school and I invited my community and they don't come to me, I have to come to them. So just wanted to hear from them. Thank you.
So in regards to the HR evaluate, I don't have the knowledge to do that, but HR evaluates those and make sure that health conditions people are put in their to consider that. And then in regards to getting out in the community, one of the things that we've been looking at, so as far as outreach, one of the things I recently hired someone that, just have a lot of experience in doing large scale events, being out in the community that's already known. Hired someone that was internal to make sure that, we were just really reaching that community. And we plan to do some town halls in different communities. And one of the things that I'm looking at doing as well is working and connecting organizations that's already known to the community, right? That's already trusted, and training them on how to fill out complaint forms, how to fill out that information so that they can forward it to me. That was something that I did when I was in Albany. We partnered with legal organizations and they would assist complainants to fill out the form, and then they forward it to us so that the person didn't have to go to City Hall to do that. And then one of the things that I've seen as far as civilian oversight, New York City does, where they change the meeting location to different districts, so they go to community centers. One of the biggest things for us is that we want to make sure that we can live stream, and there's certain things that we have to do in accordance to the Texas Open Meeting Act. But that's something that you can employ the board, or I can make a recommendation that they explore that. We have 15 different districts. Can we rotate and have meetings in those districts instead of them having to come to City Hall? Because that might be a little intimidating. So those are the things that we can look at. I've been making a lot of changes, and I would also be mindful of that, because that could be a lot for people. But I know that my office, the way that we were created, and just there's been a lot of, we've been in the news a lot, and I wanted to make sure that just in general, there's more awareness that needs to be done, because people don't know that this service is even here for them. So I've been just reaching out to the organization that's already known and letting them know who I am, and then how we can partner. So that's been the way I've been doing that.
Yes, good morning and welcome, and thank you for being part of this Menudo Breakfast this morning. My name is Connie Ramos Caibi, and I'm from Brooklyn. I'm also one of the co-founders of Unidos. So I know it's a big organization, and I know Dallas has several of our Unidos groups here. My question to you is, how are you all, your office, going to bring out communication for our community? A lot of people don't even know how to even start a complaint against a police officer. I know they call a lot of our LULAC councils and say, hey, this happened to me, how can I get help? So how is your office planning to do some kind of a workshop or something for the community, for them to know the steps they need to take to even file the complaint against what happened to them?
I think one of the biggest things that we plan to do as well with that, with the communication advisors, really doing some education on that and also training. So that is something that we plan to do. We want to partner with organizations like yourself that's already known the community that people are going to attend, because that's important so that we reach the high volume. So, we definitely welcome to do that. Just letting them know how to follow complaints, and a lot of organizations does that. One of the things I found with moving to Dallas, and just also underneath this organization, there's a lot of things, I think, stuff that we weren't, when we were created, doing, right? As far as that awareness of how to follow complaints, those simple things that, we're just assuming people know how to do that, and that's not true, or the information that we want them to include, right? Sometimes, one of the things I want to dispel, people think, oh, I need to know the badge number, or I need to know the officer. We have unfeathered assets. You don't need to know that. You just give us a date, the time, we will find that officer. You do not need to have all that relevant information. But I do need to know as far as what you believe as far as the violation that occurred, so that we can look into it.
Okay, I'm going to piggyback on that. A lot of our community will not even file a complaint because they're afraid, or they know, oh, I'm going to file a complaint and nothing's going to be done. So how do you keep the communication open with the complaint group to know we're working on it, we're doing this, we're doing that? Because a lot of the time, the person that's gotten hurt will not even follow through because they're just like, oh, I'm gonna complain and nothing's gonna happen. So how are you planning to keep up that open communication to complain to let them know what steps are or where you are with the complaint?
Yeah, so one of the things that we started to do is, I think in the past what has happened, we've leaned a lot on DVD to provide that status update. So one of the things I started to do is making sure that we create, templates like as things are moving along in the process that we're notifying that person and reaching out to them directly, and my office is doing that. That's been a recommendation that I've gotten from the board, is that they wanted my office to be the person to reach out to the community so that they just feel more comfortable. And one of the other things I've been working on as well with the city is doing transparency data, where you can put in your case number and it'll tell you where your case is in the process. So you don't necessarily have to also reach out to me if you're just not comfortable with speaking to someone in that office after filling out the form. One of the things I find sometimes is that people are really scared, especially in this process. Just even filing a complaint in an officer. So sometimes I'll get someone to file a complaint. It's just a follow-up. Sometimes it's really difficult. One of the things I just did was, hire an investigator who is really skilled and have that experience doing internal affairs investigation, and wanted to make sure that, we had that knowledge to make sure that our investigation is the same, or the same par is internal affairs investigation, so that we can gather our own evidence and track the case in that way, so that if they don't want to cooperate, we can still get the findings that we need to recommend some kind of discipline if it's sustained.
Thank you. My question to you is, we're preparing to do some hoping to do some workshops in the community that will be in Spanish to educate community about what their rights are, especially in terms of the new administration and what they're promising to do in terms of immigration. Are you prepared personally to come out with Spanish-speaking workshops and do a workshop about how the community and the police can, what to do if they have an issue with the Dallas police, maybe, because our mayor has promised that we will have 100% cooperation. So what are you prepared to do for Spanish-speaking presentation person?
So I think one of the things that, I plan to do, and that's part of the reasons why I've hired people that can also assist with that. So I think, having staff, especially my communication advisor, is the second highest position, right? That person's going to be fluent in Spanish. That will be doing that workshop and assisting, and I plan to be there. I can speak English, I'm not fluent in Spanish, but they can also translate. But I think one of the things I'll make sure that we're there as well. And that was part of the reasons why I made sure that the hires that we're putting in is fluent, so that we can, do those presentations as well.
But the mayor said it's agree with Donald Trump with the deportation process.
Yes, that is really unfortunate, and unfortunately, even with, I've tried to meet with the mayor, I have not been able to be successful in doing that. But I report to the city manager, so I just want to be clear with that. And as any ways that I can, as far as on my end, what I can do to ensure that if something does happen and we're violating anybody's rights, that there's someone here that
What
can
about undocumented parents as U.S. citizen children?
It's still applicable. I mean, to me, I just feel like you're still here, and I think it's still important. So I look at it as, okay, if there's a DVD policy, and I believe the chief has said that he would not cooperate, so that's important, right? I think we would have a situation differently if you had a chief that would. I think we are going through a national search, so one of the things that I have employed community organizations is to make sure that you're part of that process and selecting a chief, right? A permitted chief, and making sure that is something that's important for you. Whoever's selected that, they share the values of Dallas, right? And the community. And you're part of that process. That's been something I've been advocating in other groups. Make sure you're part of that. I'm going to make sure that I'm part of that, because I want to make sure that we're not going backwards. What has also happened with civilian oversight, so there's state attacks that's happening that we're preparing as well on that. So Florida has abolished civilian oversight completely. Arizona was looking to do it. They have just reduced it. So the city is pretty late as far as like independent investigation and civilian oversight. Most cities had it since the 70s, 80s. And what has been happening is there has been bills that's been introduced in the state legislature that would either reduce or greatly reduce the number of board members. So we have already started to meet with senators to get ahead of it and plan to be going to Austin to advocate to make sure, because I think that would greatly affect this community, especially when you already have a community that's afraid to go to the police. If you create, reduce the mechanism or eliminated a mechanism where they can come to a civilian, I think that's going to have a really huge negative impact on that. So we're also, gearing up for that, and we just met with the ACLU Texas as well, and letting us know what's on the agenda and what we should plan ahead. So that's something that we're looking at.
I think I'm next. For accountability, we always know that numbers are important. So I have about 3 questions there. The first one is, how many complaints do you get in approximately whatever time period, month, year, whatever? And how many of those or rather, can you divide that by ethnic group? How many are from Black, how many are from Latinos, how many are from Asian? And that will also give us a strong view as to how the message is getting out. By then, do you have those numbers?
I do not have exactly, but I do have the number of complaints that we get on average. So the last fiscal year, we had about 3,700 complaints. So that's part of the transparency in the dashboard. One of the things we're going to have is making sure that people, one, is entering information about demographic. There's a lot of people that we get that don't want to enter, right? So one of the things we have added was that letting them know this is not in a way to track them. This is just so we know the impacted groups. So just being really transparent in why we're asking for that information is not something that I adjusted, but I wanted to make sure that the community has a way of knowing exactly what we're doing, because most of the cases, unfortunately, we don't report all the cases out that we review in the office. But I wanted the community to know how much complaints, and I think actually the number is too low, 3,700. That's not really reaching all the Hispanic community, so that's a large percentage, right? So
that was the question. How many of those? Everybody knows we're in the high 40s percentage in the city. So therefore, at least a third of that, which should be from Hispanic individuals. And my question following that is, please make sure you have a Hispanic in your higher echelon. I'm looking at your staff here, and where's the Hispanic? If you came to a Hispanic meeting, the smart thing would be to bring your Hispanic leadership with you, or an Asian meeting to take that. And so, being strong backer of my nationality, I would ask you to please make sure that there, in your higher echelon, there is a Hispanic. Thank you.
So the second highest position will be someone of Hispanic background, right? So the communication advisor, that is the second highest position in my office. That person is, in a different process of hiring. So until they complete the background check, they can't start. So that's part of the reason. But I will make sure that in future events that we have, that's represented.
Thank you so much. Welcome to Dallas again. We have one last speaker, and her name is Blanca Jimenez. She is also with OCPO, so same organization. We're continuing the theme. She is a senior outreach specialist for the City of Dallas OCPO. She has a long history of working with many organizations previously, such as the Salvation Army. She supported the Home Sweet Home program to assist low-income residents in the Dallas urban area. Please give a big round of applause to Mrs. Jimenez.
Thank you and good morning. First, I want to thank Dr. Elba Garcia and God for allowing us to be here and do a presentation for the Office of the Community Police Oversight. I am the temporary Senior Outreach Specialist for the Office of the Community Police Oversight. And I just wanted to give you a little I've been outreaching for about 6 weeks, and I do hear a lot of fear, wanting to do complaints on a police officer, especially for the Hispanic community. And when I also hear that the fear comes from when they call for an incident that happens in certain locations, the police officers never show up. Or they show up 4 hours later. Or they show up the next day just to do a follow-up. So when I ask, well, did you call and make complaints about that? They didn't show up? Well, no. Because, the department needs to know that as well. If you want the department to come out and help you and connect with you with the situations and the concerns you have, then we need to know that in the department. So I suggested that even if they don't show up, you need to call and place a complaint. And as the director Michelle mentioned earlier, you don't need to know their badge number, the name, because I also heard that they don't provide a badge number or a name, but all the officers have badge numbers, correct? So I did emphasize on, if you just call and let them know the time, the day, and the location, somebody in that department will find that, and they can move forward with that complaint. I also found out in the community that there's a lot of good things they say about officers going above and beyond. And again, I asked, did you let us know? Because we do have a complaint form and we do have accommodation form. And a lot of them didn't even know we had those. First of all, they didn't even know the department was here. And as Michelle mentioned earlier, the department's been since 2019. But a lot of the people, I visited the rec centers, I visited libraries, I visited churches, I visited some schools, and nobody knew about the department. However, they did know about the complaint form, but they don't know about the accommodation form. So it's just about somebody going out and giving the community that information. Not just providing information, but actually sitting down and talking to the community, to the ones that are impacted, to the ones that don't know what they can do. And also that us as civilians, we have rights. We have rights that we need to be aware of. So on that note, I feel very strongly that the department can't come out here and help, especially the Hispanic community, because those are the ones that are being left out. I feel that if we are out there, if the staff is out there and communicating and delivering the message and making a little bit time to talk to those individuals in the rec centers, especially our seniors, our older adults, they're the ones that are not more impacted, but the ones that are, from what I hear, that are left out. Or I hear that in certain locations, that when they see a police officer, they're being labeled and they're questioning, what are you doing here? What do you have? Well, they're just walking, but because they're a certain demographic, they're going to be asked additional questions. And we as civilians, we have rights too. You have to know your rights so you can be able to respond whenever you encounter an interaction with a police officer, whether it's good or whether it's bad. We have to be knowledge too that they're police officers and we have to respect them because they're police officers. However, they have to respect us as civilians too. And it goes both ways. You know, it's how we interact, how we communicate with the police officers, and how the police officers interact with the community. It has to be together. It can't be certain police, and I think the department has to be strong enough to know which officers should remain officers. They need to look into that too. So I did hear a lot of questions, and I did hear certain police officers, names and stuff as far as what they did and what they said, and it's just not right. Just because you have that uniform on or the police officer doesn't give you the right to disrespect or ask questions that's out of your policies or procedures. We all have policies and procedures. We all have somebody that we need to account for. So if we have this position that we can impact the community, by God, let's just do whatever we can. Well, let's just do whatever we can to help the community. And I am here to tell you, Miss Michelle and Miss Sierra are two of the best people you can just call, and they will give you an answer, or if they don't have an answer, they will direct you to somebody that will. So, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is it on? Okay. So I thank you. You have just given some really great information. I am involved in various neighborhoods in West Dallas and Oak Cliff. I would love to invite you to come to West Dallas to speak to our West Dallas 1 neighborhood. There's 13 neighborhood organizations under one umbrella, and this type of information we need. We also, and I agree with you on the good comments. Our Lake West police officers in West Dallas are wonderful. They're very supportive of our community and are always there when we call them. And also in Oak Cliff, we have just formed an Oak Cliff Coalition of Neighborhood Associations. I would like to invite you to that as well, because into our senior centers as well. Because a lot of what you said is they don't call to give the good or the complaint, so you never know. But so that you hit that you're right on point about that. But also, do you have a commission where the public can go and voice their concerns? Mostly a lot of, like we have the zoning commission, we have the central commission where we can go as our public and speak directly to the commissioners who go then back and do whatever they do to pass the information up. Is there such a thing for the Office of the Community Police Oversight?
That would be a question for my director.
Okay, yes, I actually had that question for her, but I missed it.
Let me address on the one that for me going out and it's not working. Okay, I would love to go out to your seniors and address some of these situations. However, I am the temporary specialist, so today is my last day. However, I can get you my personal information, and I would love to go over there and just talk to y'all if Ms. Andre does not have any issues with that.
So we'll have a senior outreach person as well. That's going to be, starting really shortly. So one of the things I will touch on, I think I touched briefly. So we have the Community Police Oversight Board. They're essentially our commissioners that you would reach out to and share your concerns, and they look at a variety of issues. So we also look at, one of the things I want to know, I think we didn't touch on, we get monthly reports from the police department about arrest reports, and the Hispanic and the Black race is really high, and that's something that the commissioners have brought up several times, and we actually have a presentation, the chief, and as well as someone's going to be presenting about the disparity and why is the numbers this high. And that's going to be at the January meeting. So I really do employ January 14th. If community can come out to go to that presentation so you can hear from the chief. And I think that will be an avenue as well to ask the chief, what his plans is in regards to immigration, right? That would be a great opportunity to do that. But we do have that avenue where they can share concerns that they have in regards to policy, the police department as well.
But I would like to stress that coming into the new year, 2025, that your outreach at the grassroots levels in the neighborhood, that information gets to the community. Because I know that most of them won't go out to City Hall to talk, or they might not even know who their representative or commissioner for their district is the representative, okay? So it's just a lack of information, but that is so powerful information that our community at the grassroots level, they need to know that they have someone they can take back, you can hear their information and take it back. So that's where
Yes. I plan on doing that.
And I'll follow up with, I'll get your card and follow up with you, and then I'll also let my District 1 City Councilman and District 6 know, so that we're working together, and that I came here. This is great. I'm glad I came here because it's great information.
Yes, and I would love to connect with you because I live in West Dallas. So.
All right. Great. Okay.
Hi. I have a twofold question here. So Mario Khan, nice to meet you guys. So my first question is, what kind of accountability do you guys have? It sounds like you have this tracker where people file the complaints and you can kind of see how many they're going, but what kind of accountability does your office have as far as the time on when to respond, right? Because people can submit complaints, but if they're not hearing back in 30, 60, 90, half a year, right? Like how long does that take for you to normally respond? And are there any tutorials in both English and Spanish? Because a big deterrent for people to submit complaints is not just being a fight, but not being able to or knowing how to because the website's too complicated, right? Like, is there any easier way to submit these kind of complaints?
So we have the ability to submit a complaint. You can do that either in person. We can walk you through that process online as well. One of the things that we're also working on, because the website was really outdated, we're working with the city to improve that because that was some concern that we had as a city is this size. Our website should look way better as far as and just be more accessible. We've been working also to make sure that our website can just automatically translate to Spanish if people choose that language. So that's something as well. We're making sure that accessibility is reaching. And they can submit it as well. So one of the things for our online complaint, if you select Spanish, it'll automatically change it to Spanish if your preferred language. So that's something we're going to be working with the communication advisor to make sure that awareness. And what I'm gathering here is that everybody, one of the main things is showing people how to file that complaint. So we're going to be working on that to make sure that we're doing that as well. As far as mechanism and accountability, I think one of the things that we wanted to make sure that the community is aware is that a lot of cases, we review a lot of cases a week. We go through probably like 50 complaints. We're looking at any complaint that is submitted to the police department. A lot of people are submitting directly to internal affairs because I think there's a lack of awareness of our office and we want to improve on that. We see that complaint if it's submitted through internal affairs. If it's submitted to us, we go through and one of the part of the accountability, if internal affairs determine no investigation, my office has the ability, if we disagree and we find something, we can change that. So that's something I think a lot of the community don't know how much influence that we have in the process. So if the community is also not happy about how their case is being investigated or if it's being a division referral and those things, they can reach out to me and request an independent request, review, of that. If they have an additional evidence or something that they didn't feel comfortable submitting to the police department, but they do with us. That's something that we're working on to make sure that the community understand there's that mechanism, right? We're kind of like that check and balance. We are the accountability for internal affairs if you're not happy with that process. And then as far as if it's something where the reason why it was not sustained, proven to be a violation is because there's an issue with our policy. You can recommend as well that we make some recommendations to change that policy. That's why we have a policy analyst. And one of the things we want to do is have a tracker for those policy recommendations that were submitted, so there's that transparency. And one of the things that I've heard from board members was, I guess, how long cases, how long we were waiting for a response from the chief previously. So one of the things that I've employed my staff, like, we need to put in the language, one, the law requires that we get a response from the chief, and I think what we should also ensure is recommend that we get a response within 60 days at least, so that we're not in this cycle of following up, you know, letting us know, what is your decision? Are you gonna approve this policy or not? So I think as we have a new chief, we have ability to really establish that relationship and what it should look like, and making sure that we're following our own code as well. So
That's excellent, thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Maricela Martinez. Quick follow-up question about the staff. It sounds like your next highest position isn't exactly all the way filled, but I'm curious to know how many people are you going to have on staff, and what percentage of those will be Spanish speakers, and are any of them going to be part of the outreach team that you mentioned?
yes. So Spanish speaking is going to be part of the outreach. So we have the situation, so because of the sensitivity of our office, our staff have to go through additional background, and they have to be CJIS certified. The Spanish speaking for outreach that we're gonna have permanently, they're already internal within the city of Dallas, but they wanted to take some time before they start this new role. And they're gonna be starting in January at the beginning. And we'll be Spanish speaking. And then as far as the percentage, that would be 2 out of 5 of those staff will be Spanish speaking and Hispanic background. We are a very small office, and one of the things for a city of this size, we're only 6. That's really small. For you know, Austin has 20 staff, and we're doing the work of, you know, that with, you know, with 6 people, and I'm on call. I respond to any critical incidents when it goes as far as an officer involved shooting. So I'm called and notified, and I respond to those scenes at any time. So we do try our best, and we're going to be looking at, you know, making some recommendations so we can have some additional support so we can reach everyone. But that's why we need community partners, because we are so small, right?
So currently, you're going to be 6 out of the 6, 2 will be Spanish speakers.
Yes.
And we have over almost 48% of the city are Spanish speakers. So what can we do to support to get more Spanish speakers?
I think, you know, for me, I think one of the biggest things is advocating for us to get additional resource, and I believe as the city manager has, when I came on, the budget was already passed, so I'm going with what we currently are budgeted as. But we are going to be going through a new budget cycle starting in March, advocating for that, and I think advocating for additional resource for this office. The city manager has shared that they would be looking at ways to make some improvement, and we do plan to do some additional briefing to the city council in the new year to make some recommendations. But I needed some time to get to know the community, see what our needs are, and I'll be making some recommendations. But I can't guarantee because it has to be approved by the council. Thank you.
Any community announcements?
Hello everybody, good morning.